willing, our hearts will be connected in ways that allow us to really feel the energy of this work. I really want to begin first and foremost by thanking God and thanking all of you for being here, by acknowledging, as we typically and as we've always learned from our First Nation communities and our Native elders, to first and foremost always acknowledge, recognize, and send appreciation and gratitude to the original caretakers of the land, those that were here before we were here, those that in many ways suffered the first trauma of this land, and those in various places where you may be gathered, our various tribes here in Chicago, Potawatomi and other tribes. So we send and acknowledge the elders of those that are gathered with us today. And we also, our community takes very seriously the idea of sacred time and sacred space. There's a tradition that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, when he came into Medina, he found our Jewish sisters and brothers fasting, and he asked some of the companions, well, why are they fasting? And they told them, they said, well, we fast because this is the day that God helped Moses and the children of Israel be free from the tyranny of Pharaoh, essentially Passover. And the Prophet said, well, that tradition is an important tradition. We'll fast too, and fast 2 days, in fact, during that time. He didn't go on a historical expedition to find whether or not that day was the actual day. He just honored the day. And so we have a tradition. So whether you're coming from the Muslim tradition, Jewish, Catholic, or other traditions, Native traditions, we take sacred time and sacred space very seriously. And we couldn't be in more sacred time and space in the Muslim tradition than these last 10 nights of Ramadan. Especially during the odd nights, and this may be an odd night for some, where we look for the night of what's called the night of power, a moment of opening, a moment of spiritual insight. So all of those who are fasting, we really honor that. And we honor the traditions that come about, especially in this land. Yesterday, for many of us across the country, we also honored the birthday of Malcolm. He would have been 95 years old, and we honored that legacy. We sit upon the shoulders of people like Malcolm, may God have mercy on him, Imam Muhammad, Shirley, all of these extraordinary leaders in our community that have come before us. We honor their traditions, we honor their sacrifice. An organization like IMAN would not be here if it had not been for that type of sacrifice. And in fact, speaking of here, you see me and some of my colleagues here from IMAN, who you'll get a chance to hear from in a moment, in our beloved community ceramic studio. This is a space that in fact was crafted out of our work to acknowledge and commemorate the legacy of Martin Luther King in this community that led to the building of the first memorial of Martin Luther King in Chicago and Illinois, that's now situated 5 blocks south from where we are sitting in the Marquette Park studio. And as a result, this studio was kind of left as part of its legacy, and we're grateful to be in this beautiful space together, gathered. And this is an important, and as we're gathered, you see that we're separated physically, not spiritually or socially. We have fought the idea and the term social separation because in many ways it's so anathema to everything IMAN has been doing over the last 22 years. Our communities have suffered because they've been socially, spiritually, communally, and economically segregated, separated, disconnected from one another. So the term of being socially isolated or socially distant is one that, or separate is one that we really have challenged. Of course, as a federally qualified health center, we understand the wisdom and logic of physical separation. And at this organization, and those who come here still as an essential service, IMAN was deemed as such. So we have been operating over the last 2.5 months with a limited staff capacity. And of course, all of our employees are wearing masks. All of our employees are tested. All of our employees are taking their temperatures. And soon we will become a public testing site here for COVID-19 in the community. So we take that seriously. And we have in fact been responding in this moment in extraordinary ways. I mean, over the last, and we'll talk about this shortly with some of my colleagues that are here from the organization, staff members and board members that are here. But over the last 10 weeks alone, just on the idea of food distribution, and we'll talk about this, literally this site has been a space where that we have unloaded, packed, distributed, and delivered over 5,250 care packages to families across Inglewood, Chicagoland, Auburn, Gresham, in Woodlawn, across Southside Chicago neighborhoods, with the support of entities like Chicago Beyond and the Busty family, and with the partnership with our beloved sisters and brothers from Rage and Teamwork Inglewood, we have been really hitting the ground and supporting people. And the last 10 weeks alone, although we've kept our health center, of course, open, we've limited as much physical activity and been able to incorporate a very dynamic telemedicine engagement. So we, between medical and behavioral health visits over the last 10 weeks, it's been over 1,550 visits of people that we've been able to sustain and engage and connect to. We've supported small businesses and owners and artists in the community. We've launched what's called the internet sessions, a way of creating and sustaining intimacy and connection, especially at a time where people are suffering from feelings of isolation, the anxiety of being separated, the anxiety of the moment. We've been able to have 21 of these sessions that bring over 28 artists with behavioral health therapists together, and have engaged 450 participants in these intimate circles, these ciphers that really allow folks to continue to stay connected. Again, so much of IMAN's work over the last 22 years, as Shamar indicated, is about connecting the disconnected, lifting up the spirit of what it means to be a community that rises together and challenges the things that have pitted us against one another. And finally, you know, this is in the last 10 weeks, you've seen IMAN step really intensely into the world of confronting issues that we have been speaking about along with our organizers and activists like Communities United, United Congress. For the last 20 years, we've been hammering about overcrowding in prisons. We've been fighting for, you know, the release of nonviolent low-level offenders. We've been fighting for holistic reentry services. But unfortunately, those were never really built in the way they needed to. And in the last 10 weeks, because of the epidemic of the breakout of COVID-19 in the jail and the prisons, IMAN has been one of the organizations that are also working to receive some of those who are coming home early, finding housing, finding ways of quarantining people safely, giving them the health care they need and the services that they so desperately, of course, deserve as they come home. And we've been able to do that alongside all the other extraordinary work that this organization is dealing with. The theme that you've probably heard from us during this month of Ramadan, every year, our Ramadan Drive is a critical way in which we reach out to supporters and people that believe in this work and partners across the country. The theme this year was Inni mal usri yusra. It's a tradition in the Muslim tradition and Quranic ayat that says, with hardship come ease. With every hardship, there is a moment that comes that ease will come. And for us, it was important to recognize the hardship. That theme meant first and foremost acknowledging the extraordinary hardship that our communities are going through. We always said when America gets a cold, inner city urban neighborhoods get the bone-chilling flu. And now that America and the world has gotten a flu, these neighborhoods are being really subjected to extraordinary pain and difficulties. And unfortunately, in some ways, we're just beginning to see the beginning of that. And so we must recognize the difficulty. But with difficulty, as we're promised in the Quran, and as we think about from a spiritual standpoint, there are moments of ease, there are openings, there are insights. And we take that very seriously. In some ways, Ramadan is a moment, and as some of you know, of course, many of you are fasting, you know it's a moment of disruption. There's power sometimes in disrupting and somewhat unsettling the common kind of patterns. And I think the power in this moment that we hope, the silver lining in this moment, is that there is an insight that we need to do much more than just provide relief as we are doing right now to people as they're coming home, to families as they're getting food. We need to be part of larger interventions, bold interventions, Marshall Plan level interventions that change systems, that build wealth, that really fundamentally deal with the major racial economic disparities that we've been challenging on some level for the last 22 years, and doing so in partnership, building up the possibility of what our communities can look like when we come together. And you know, this work has been so inspiring in great part because of so many people like you that are joining us this evening, people across the country that believe in IMAN, even if you're not in Chicago, even if you're not in Illinois. We have people who believe in the model, and we've gone across the country and we've talked and we've engaged and we've led workshops in over 8 cities just this last year alone. But in one city in the last 5 years, we even went further than that. We have helped to see what this model looks like when we can holistically provide the full support to build it somewhere else. And with the leadership of an extraordinary group of individuals in Atlanta, IMAN Atlanta has now become a reality that is thriving, that is led by a dynamic individual by the name of Nasir Sabri, who you'll hear from shortly, our director in Atlanta, and with an extraordinary advisory committee and a phenomenal staff. Atlanta in the last 5 years, IMAN Atlanta has been able to do what really it took us 10 years here in Chicago to do, and we stay connected as one organization. And so without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and segue into a small video about the phenomenal work in Atlanta. And then after that, you'll hear from the dynamic leader of that work, Nasir Sabri, in Atlanta at the IMAN Green Reentry Village right there, right outside the West End. So we'll go ahead and cue up the video.
The city of Atlanta is extremely proud of each and every last one of you. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the members of the Atlanta City Council, on behalf of all of the citizens of Atlanta, do hereby honor the Green Reentry Program. We are exceptionally proud to recognize the Green Reentry Apprenticeship Program for its service to all of Atlanta, and it's signed by me and the rest of all of the members of the Atlanta City Council.
Right now, on the street. And after that, I have probation, right, for years. And during that time, I won't be able to vote, but I'll be out here paying my taxes, right? And so I believe in no taxation without representation. The Revolutionary War was fought all of that basic privilege. And put some people in there that will represent our values as an American people. And that's just the bottom line. I need my vote. So I'm gonna continue to vocalize, energize, organize, strategize, and mobilize until we can get that done. You know what I'm saying? Until we can get these folks out of here and get some true representation.
Audio's on.
Work in that video is gives you a visual representation of everything that IMAN has been doing here, from the organizing work. You heard a reference to a campaign called No Taxation Without Representation, a drive that we are pushing to actually help enfranchise 250,000 citizens in Atlanta who are not eligible to vote today because they're either on parole or some form of connection to the the criminal justice system. You saw the work of the art, you saw the work of the organizing, and certainly the work of Green Reentry. So we're going to go right now to Nasir Sabri, right at the IMAN Green Reentry Village, who's on live for us.
All right, Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak. I want to first begin by just saying welcome to Atlanta. This is the IMAN's Green Reentry Village. So we're honored to really have invested so much time and energy over these past 5 years in this work. I want to first just really start by talking about the level of commitment that those who have graduated from our Green Reentry program and have come back on to our team to support the work here in Atlanta and celebrating just the transformation of their own lives and the work that IMAN has been able to do over the last 5 years. So I'm tremendously personally excited. I'm inspired, but I know that what we've done thus far is not enough. And COVID-19 has just been a moment in time that exposed all of the inequalities that we know that are real in our community today. And that stresses that point of our work isn't done, but our work has just begun here in Atlanta. One of the things that we've stressed and started with in the beginning of our programming here is our Green Reentry Leadership Development Program. This apprenticeship teaches young men how to go at it with their hands, to one, transform their outlook on life, but do it by having job training and readiness for the workplace in construction. So here on this site, they've been able to learn how to do some of the basic plumbing, carpentry skills, HVAC, HVAC, and just begin to really, for the first time, get their hands on a building that they can call their own and be a part of the work here at IMAN. So currently we have over 7 residents from our Green Reentry cohort living here. We have a total of 20 in capacity and we're growing. COVID-19 has put somewhat of a slowdown in our process to bring people in, but the need has increased. The need for housing has increased. The need for community and being able to be a part of this work has really grown for us here in Atlanta. The Green Reentry program itself comes in this space where the community needs to have holistic programming that provides community for those returning home from incarceration. But in addition to that, community that encourages a sense of leadership, of taking ownership of the block. So what we're going to see later on as I take a walk down, we're going to see just the community in action as we look at the needs of fresh fruits and vegetables in our neighborhood, hot meals, halal meals that we do during this blessed month of Ramadan. But I want to share one of the key organizing activities that's happening here in Atlanta. And over the years, we've organized for social change through our criminal justice reform initiatives. We've taken the initiative to really begin to promote and push for support for voter rights. This year, in 2020, just last month, we launched the No Taxation Without Representation Voter Rights Drive, Voter Rights Advocacy. This is our campaign for Atlanta to really provide an opportunity here in Georgia that's not happening for those who are returning home to have the right to vote. They're here paying their taxes, they're here making a contribution to society, but still can't provide that basic need of an American right to give their vote. So we're pushing for that in our campaign this year as we move into this very important year for presidential election, but even in local elections and making sure that the voice of Georgians count. COVID-19 is real. The struggle is real within the community. So what we're able to do at IMAN to provide food, fresh fruits and vegetables, I think you can see it a little better from here, and connect with the community, still practicing all of our social distancing, still making sure that we're wearing our proper protection masks, etc. But we have our leaders here, volunteers from the neighborhood. We have our IMAN staff here as well, providing fresh fruits and vegetables to the community. But we're allowing for this to be an opportunity to engage and really know what's happening critically on the ground. Our work at IMAN has been an impact for Georgia, for Atlanta. We want it to continue. The only way that happens is through your support. We're celebrating this blessed month of Ramadan, and we know that we're digging deep in our hearts to understand what Allah wants of us in this moment for ourselves, but also for our community, to not sit on our hands, to not be stagnant in this moment, but to turn up our activism, to turn up our donorship and our dollars. So we are honored to have all of you here from Atlanta who are on our Zoom call, those from across Georgia, the United States, who support our work here at IMAN in Chicago and Atlanta. We're asking and requesting for you to continue to be supportive of our work, and keep us in your dua, keep us in your prayers, and make sure that you stay tuned to our work through social media and through our website. May Allah's peace and blessings be with you. Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak.
Assalamu alaikum. That was fantastic, Mansoor. I hope all of you were inspired. Last year, this time during Ramadan, I was at that very location, cutting the ribbon with some of our staff here on that facility. And it was just absolutely extraordinarily inspiring to see what the Green Reentry crew built and took a dilapidated building and created into this dynamic, thriving place of residence right in the heart of West End, right outside, the West End in Atlanta. And like you heard Mansoor saying, it's not only a place of residence, it's a place of connectivity. It's a place where they're organizing for major campaigns and building power and building relationships, supporting healthy eating. That type of model is just phenomenal to see. And it's just such an really humbling experience for us to be here in Chicago, learning from our brothers and sisters in Atlanta. We are learning as much from them as they could ever learn from what we're doing here in Chicago. And that kind of connection is really powerful. You saw again in the video, the power of arts throughout our work here in Chicago and Atlanta. It is not just, you'll never in 20 years ever hear any of us at IMAN refer to artistic expression as entertainment. We just simply don't see it that way. And it's not the type of art we do. I mean, the art that we talk about as being, socially conscious, spiritually rooted, spatially relevant, the type of art that, quite frankly, in a space like this, help not only to produce the studio, but forge sacred connections between communities that historically have been pitted and disconnected from one another. If you go to the Martin Luther King Memorial today, you'll sit on a bench, and on that bench, you'll see over 250 ceramic tiles that were crafted in this studio alone, made by seniors and elders and young people and organizers, all asked to what home means to them. And really this kind of idea that we all inhabit a sacred home together, that my home is informed by how you think about your home, that collectively we weave a tapestry that builds a collective vision for home. And the actual very home, the word is actually written in the memorial in 8 different languages that start with the word, the Potawatomi language. And interesting, the word in Arabic that's used, sukun, also comes from the word sakina, which means spiritual tranquility. That home should be and could be a space for spiritual tranquility. We know that that unfortunately is not the reality for so many who don't have adequate housing, that don't have safe neighborhoods, that don't have those privileges. But we at IMAN are committed to that vision. And one of the greatest ways we are committed to it is by sacred connections between one another. And art has always been a powerful vehicle, tool, inspiration that connects the disconnected and allows us to radically reimagine the world as it could be. And part of that connection is understanding our stories. And so now, without further ado, I want to take us to a special place on the south side of Chicago called the Bunker, where you'll see our Director of Arts and Culture and her phenomenal, the department that helps to run this, Sadia Nawab, will introduce you to 2 artists that are connected to our roster, Ronnie Malley and Abdul Hakim, who are going to take you on a musical ethnomusicology journey of the way art and sound is both informed by sacred traditions and connected to one another. The way that the very historical patterns of sounds and maqams, as they were called, scales, inform the way the first call to prayer, the adhan, was ever made, and the way it then emerged not only throughout the world into West Africa, but then found its way through the enslaved populations into the cotton fields of the South, into the field calls that many of enslaved populations were using as coded words for resistance. So without further ado, let's take it to Sadia Nawab, our Director of Arts and Culture, and to the Bunker.
Thank you, Rami, and thank you everyone who has joined us from Chicago and Atlanta and across the country and across the globe. Peace and blessings, everyone. My name is Sadia Nawab, and I'm the Director of Arts and Culture. And I'm so hyped to be here on the south side of Chicago at the Bunker at Ace Universal Studios. I'm here with 2 incredibly talented artists. One of them is a multi-instrumentalist musician, a producer, an educator, and an artist on our artist roster, Ronnie Malley, and his accompaniment, Abdul Hakim, is a multi-genre instrumentalist, a guitarist, and has played with some of the greats from the jazz and global traditions. We hope you enjoy their performance.
So each hour of the day, every time you hear the call to prayer, has a different maqam to it. The first one you heard is Hijaz. This one is called Ras. Allahu Akbar, Now, what's very unique about this is I'm going to show really quick how that azan, the call to prayer, especially in that maqam rast, can be found also even as far as America in the blues. So when you listen to something like Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, you might hear something similar to that in the Levy Camp Holler when you hear W.C. Handy singing, "Well, woke up this morning, I was feeling bad." Eventually, this instrument became the European lute, and you would hear things like this. And in Spain, this instrument influenced other styles of music like flamenco, you might hear. So I had the privilege of working with Brother Abdul Hakim here on a play that we did together called American Griot. And in that play, we were talking about the evolution of these instruments, the evolution of the people and the storyteller, and how they influence what we know today as America. So this is one of those songs that's on there, and this is a song called Gaulo Jelly. Jelly, jelly, galo, galo, jelly, jelly, galo, galo, jelly, jelly, galo, galo, jelly, jelly. galo, jelly, jelly. Galo, galo, jelly, jelly. Galo, galo, jelly, jelly. Galo, galo, jelly, jelly. You're gonna hear how this also became the blues when you go into that shuffle. Gallo, gallo, jelly, jelly. Gallo, gallo, jelly, jelly. Gallo, gallo, jelly, jelly. Gallo, gallo, jelly, jelly. Goes to something we know as jazz. All the way to rock and roll. Everything goes back to its origin eventually, right? Because you need to know where you come from in order to know where you're going.
Y'all can snap or clap from your screens at home, or give it up for Ronnie Malley and Abdul Hakim. And now back to our site at IMAN in Chicago.
Thank you, Sadia. Thank you, Sadia. Assalamu alaikum. And to our extraordinary artists, Ronnie Malley and Abdul Hakim. Again, we have over 55 artists that are currently on the artist roster across this country. Many of them in residencies that are doing just extraordinary work. I think one of the things that is really critical to think about when we're thinking about our artists is all of the ways in which they not only contribute to kind of spaces and places that are bringing our communities together, but they're also really inspiring different types of collaboration. So when you see artists on the residence that come to an IMAN, they'll spend a week working with Green Reentry participants, thinking about which their stories can be told through art, how perhaps healing can be facilitated a little more effectively through art. We've had artist residents that have actually worked and went to the schools, that have went into the middle of the, kind of the South Side into neighborhoods where we have our corner store campaign in front of corner stores. Think about connections and operations. So, what I want to do right now is, both thank the artists for all their extraordinary work and thank Sadia again. But I want to take a moment That work really at IMAN, one of the things I'm so grateful for and inspired by every single day is the type of team that I get a chance to work with. You see just a very small selection of them here, many more are online and many more continue to do the work. But I want to take this opportunity to hear from just a couple of them very quickly before we go back to Ali and close out the program tonight. Starting with Jamil, right? Jamil, has worked with us for over 20 years in some capacity or the other. And especially much of that has been supporting and overseeing different types of food distributions. When we ran a food pantry right on 53rd and Justine, and even before that on 75th and Yates. So Jamil, you have a long history. You've been really at the helm of seeing this operation of food packages, both delivered, sent to senior homes, corner stores, delivered here, over 5,000. What are you seeing in that both kind of gives you a moment of challenge that speaks to some of the hardship, but also what is giving you hope in this moment?
Well, you can't help but notice the hardship in the community, but yet the fact that when we're providing services, when we're serving that food, the people they don't just come just for the food. They come because of the holistic spirit which we give it. The IMAN is not just the food pantry. We're providing healing in both the behavioral health and the physical health, job training. We have several other programs that connect with that, and this is what has drew the community in, and we become a family together. And this all together, it provides the inspiration and the energy needed in an environment like we're faced with to keep doing this work.
Yeah, and like you said, people that are coming here in many cases are people that are leaders in our programs that all have come on some difficult moments, that are challenged currently with some of the hardships that people are being confronted with. And so they are here, they're leaders, they're working on our campaigns, they're changing policies, they're dealing with issues. But like many families right now are confronting the type of hardships that necessitate additional support and need. And we try to provide it in the most dignified way possible. And I'm grateful for you and the extraordinary team of volunteers and leaders and our partners in Teamwork Inglewood and Rage who've been out here every day. I come here, I've seen lines around the block 2 hours before we even distribute the food. And I know it takes a lot to organize that every single week. So thank you for your service and thank you for your leadership on this. Natalie, I want to turn to our Director of Behavioral Health here, Natalie Rahman. Natalie, you told me something that the other day when we kind of were talking. I know you've been here working on site, seeing some of both the challenges. People now are talking. New York Times had a whole report out last week that said really the next wave to crash across the country is going to be the crash of behavior, emotional toll of health that this is taking on individuals, and especially on communities that are already experiencing the type of hardship of the post-traumatic stress disorders that so many Black and brown communities and neighborhoods like this one are confronting. So what are you seeing in this moment, Natalie, and the staff that are directly reporting to you that speak to some of those challenges, and what's giving you hope in this moment?
Sure, absolutely. So what I would say is, as you can imagine with everything that's going on, just the mental health, concerns, it's increased. Even in our medical clinic, we see anywhere between 2 to 3 referrals to behavioral health per day. And that's not only for, individual therapy, but also for case management services, being able to help an individual through, food insecurities, financial insecurities, housing insecurities. What that has led to is, I think we're about a 9-month wait list. And so there's definitely an increased need, and the capacity to be able to address that is something that I think has been extremely challenging. I would also say, the physical distancing portion of it, not being able to be in the same room, right? And being able to pivot into the telehealth sessions. But one thing that we're noticing, that we did notice in the beginning, is, the technological difficulties that we know that our community has, right? That maybe others, it's really easy for them to just log on to their, iPhone or, smartphone. And, for some of our individuals, they don't have that, right? that has been, extremely challenging. I think what I would say in regards to like hopeful is just being able to just pivot. We were able to, do these telehealth sessions, these video sessions, specifically during this time where we know, again, that people need that extra support. So that has been, truly amazing. And then I also would say, some of my patients who have expressed financial insecurities, that we've been able to actually have them work with Jamil, right? And the food distribution, and being able to, be part of that, which has been just extremely great.
You wrote about that in one of the emails that one of the families, and again, it speaks to that type of holistic kind of engagement, that a family, you were actually seeing individual father, mother, and a daughter who were here, each getting individual counseling as well as collective family counseling. But then they also became part of the distribution of food here. We're able to get a stipend, and now are also connected to some of the work around the holistic health and wellness, the organizing work. And so it's that type of approach that I've seen them when I've been here, how connected and engaged, and what a critical part of the work they are. Natalie, you alluded to something about the ways in which that 9-month line and some of the difficulties, the technological difficulties. And, and I've been on some of these phone calls with our, for instance, our Green Reentry team that your behavioral health specialists have worked with. And, the day in, day out check that is necessary for the 50+ guys that we may have at any given moment that are part of the Green Reentry program, especially that young population, that 18 to 25-year-old. I want to turn to you now, Tariq, who, you were a graduate of the Green Reentry program. You were one of the stars of that program, of course, but you really worked hard. You not only did the week program, you did the Weekend Warriors, you got your degree at Daly College, and now you are actually one of the post-Green Reentry graduates that are placed working on IMAN's Fresh Market in the heart of Inglewood, working with Ujama, a professional general contracting, Black-led, owned, in the heart of the community, doing all this extraordinary work. But you also know about the challenges and the difficulties that are especially our young 18 to 25-year-old brothers, particularly those who are in and out of the system, confronting, encounters with the police, having to go back to blocks that are hot. I know, unfortunately, early around a month ago, one of our young men was shot. Thank God, he's doing well. He recovered, but he went to back, and this was just on one of the days he was beginning the stay-at-home order, and just the drama on the block was so intense that it led to that shooting. And I wonder what you're seeing right now from your perspective that kind of worries you, but what also gives you hope from the work that you're doing?
What really worries me the most is seeing, it's repetitive, I've been seeing change and things like that, in the community, especially with the work that we've been doing, that's what really gives us hope. Just seeing, getting the feedback from the residents, when we're working on the site, on Racine, they asking us like, okay, so what are y'all doing here? What's going on? And once we explain to them, just the smile that they give us, and then as they walk away, they're shaking their head like, yeah, like, yes. And, that's pretty gratifying for us, to be a part of that. We'll be able to, walk past later on, like, we help build this community, we help do something productive here,
Yeah.
And one of the challenges, is just seeing my brothers, the same age, around the same age that I am, constantly, in this state of mind where it's like, it's not a reality for them to, see greater, and be greater,
Yeah.
And it's just everything that they see is like, it's against them. So it's like, they have to combat it, So me being a part of that, I'm able to come from another angle, be able to tolerate that, because I can let them know, like, I can relate, bro. I feel you. I understand,
Right.
So, and then seeing them and giving me the hope, like, bro, I see what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're doing, and that's really hopeful for me. And, it's vice versa for them as well.
Tariq, so much of what you remind me of in so many of our conversations is that you are, and the brothers that you're directly talking about, you are the leadership that the community needs. It's not going to come from anywhere else. It's not going to come from outside the community and somehow sidestep those who are directly feeling the pain. If the community is going to change first and foremost, if the block's going to change, it's going to be the brothers like yourself who are leading that change. And why you're such a source of inspiration for so many of us is not only have you stepped up, you also never forgot and have never forgotten what brothers continue to deal with, what sisters are dealing with, and you're working, whether it's to change policy, whether it's out there every single day giving people kind of inspiration. So it's just beautiful seeing you. I always joke with you, your father gave you a real sacred name about being on the sacred path, and you really have lived up to that. And it's just it's such a great source of inspiration just every time I see your face. And thank you for being here tonight. Lastly, before I kind of close out with some comments, you know, IMAN has an extraordinary board of directors, which is all a volunteer board of directors. It's made up of young people, made up of folks from across the Chicagoland area. We have an advisory board in Atlanta. One of our board members is here tonight, Jamila Dour, who has been, you know, a youth leader with the organization, who's seen it from inside and out. And really always has a profound perspective. She's also a business owner. Some of you see the bottles on the tables, Herbal Vibes. She creates this extraordinary, fresh, healthy juice that people can buy and support for their health, and has experienced a lot of both the pain and the challenges I think a lot of people face in our community, Jamila, but also, you know, you're always a source of inspiration. Those find a way of kind of bringing hope to the table. So what in this moment, from your perspective, is kind of giving you concern from what you're seeing out here, and what also is giving you hope in this moment?
You know, I think that there's a real socioeconomic, political, and cultural issue that's happening within the communities that we serve. It didn't just spring up. We're living in a post-colonial social system, and a lot of the issues that we see institutionally come from, you know, colonial ideology. So I think for me, you know, those were concepts. You know, in academia, we talk about that. I talk about it with my professors, these issues that we see in neglected and disenfranchised communities. But, you know, there is real on the ground difficulties, and it's parents that are struggling to take care of their children, parents that are struggling to bring the best kind of education for their children. There's a struggle of gun violence, there's a struggle of police brutality, or there's a struggle of having a real significant value cultural identity. And this is something that I think has been happening for generations at a time. We are working against or facing generational a massacre on our identities, a massacre on our ability to hone in on resources that we need just for basic survival. But hope, I think the hope that I see with IMAN, there's a lot of hope here. There's a lot of hope that's given. But the main one that I want to talk about is the hope of rewriting and reimagining our cultural narrative, how we see ourselves, fighting against, preventing, omitting, reducing colonized consciousness, which is basically seeing yourself as inferior, seeing yourself as not being able to have the power to change. And I think when it comes to IMAN, that has been one of the most powerful elements, a part of this really beautiful organization, is bringing that hope that we can reimagine, we can reconnect, we can change the way we interact with each other. And it filters through policy, changing policy. It filters through arts and culture, entrepreneurship, which is beautiful. These are really foundational methods to realigning and changing the communities and making them the way that we want them to be.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jamila. And you know, it's because of board members like you who kind of both understand those challenges, understand the real life pain of those challenges, but also understand the real kind of solutions that the organization is trying to bring every day, that this organization both here in Atlanta is trying to put forward, kind of, again, both short-term and long-term interventions. You know, you see, I hope all of you have either met and connected with so many of our leaders in the field. You've connected with our staff And they are an extraordinary source of inspiration every single day. And it's not naive inspiration. It's people that really believe in the possibility of change. People who really believe in the human spirit, who believe what happens when people come together. Earlier today, one of our staff members, Nasir Blackwell, who is a full-time staff member and organizer, you know, he never ceases to amaze me. He may be on the, probably right now on Zoom. And, you know, Nasir wrote a very powerful email last Ramadan that talked about his incarceration. And not only was he given a life sentence, he was given a death sentence. And you talk about the possibility of losing all hope. Yeah, Nasir, you know, just miraculously, when he was given a 3 months to live, in fact, by a judge in Illinois, he set his mind, this was as a young person, that something had to change with him, something had to change with the circumstances, and he aggressively fought legally and spiritually. He became the first person to actually, you know, really become co-counsel on his own case that went all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court. He was able to come out home, and he came home, he came to IMAN, he's been part of the work, and he's been out here changing laws, working, distributing food. Today, Nasir was at 71st and Stewart, and he was with our organizers who were doing food distribution in front of one of the corner stores in Inglewood. And before he left, I said, Nasir, how are you doing? And he said, you know, I'm going through it. He said, I'll be honest, there's moments where I feel angry, there's moments I feel depressed, you know, in terms of being in this kind of lockdown mode. But, you know, there's something about interacting with the people that gives me energy, gives me gratitude. And it just reminds me of that tradition that, you know, I think everyone at this organization really takes seriously. That gratitude, showing gratitude, receiving gratitude is life-giving. We have a tradition that says, La yushkur al-nas, la yushkur Allah. Those who do not thank the people do not thank God. And those really, by extension, in so many verses in tradition, those who do not serve the people do not serve God, right? And those who do not work and organize with the people to change the conditions that create suffering and oppression in our communities are, in fact, not being righteous in their little enclaves. And I think what's been so powerful in a community like this one, when we stand shoulder to shoulder with our Jewish brothers and sisters from the church, from the native traditions, we're all really trying to demonstrate that those spiritual values are critical. They're absolutely critical when it comes to thinking about how they show up every single day in really transforming lives on the ground. And, you know, as we close out, and before I turn, you know, so much of the, before I turn this back over to Ali Bilal, you heard me mentioning Inglewood. So much of what gives me hope and inspiration in this moment is perhaps one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in the city, is a name that people understand across the country. Inglewood has become synonymous for many with the historical disinvestment, the critical abandonment, and the criminal abandonment of infrastructure in that community over the last 30, 40 years. Yet we see that, and we see the pain, but we also see extraordinary organizations like RAGE and Teamwork Inglewood. We see the leadership of someone like Stephanie Alderman-Coleman, who's been working shoulder and shoulder, hand in hand with us to radically reimagine what's possible with corner stores, with relationships between, you know, whether it be Arab store owners, community residents, between Muslim community church, and Christian churches, to begin to radically reimagine a possibility which we're calling Go Green on Racine, which some of you may know is one of the 6 finalists in this major prize called the Chicago Prize, essentially a grant that was for $10 million that goes towards the most innovative, groundbreaking, transformative community development project. So please pray for us. We're going to be submitting the final proposal in the next couple of days, along with our Inglewood partners. And God willing, we are hoping and praying that, you know, in 3 or 4 months, we find out that we will be the ones who advance to the finals with this, if so to speak. But whether we win or not, we're going to continue to do the work. Whether we win or not, we're going to continue to build with people like Alderman Stephanie Coleman, who we've known for many years, actually. Stephanie, who I'm going to bring on just to say a word or two before we then close out with our Deputy Director, Ali Bilal, is a sister that kind of, again, goes way back. We organized and worked with her mother over 15 years ago when she was an alderwoman. Stephanie's come up through the ropes. She's been a tremendous warrior. She's been working. She's a visionary, and I'm just honored that she's here with us. She would have been here with us in person, but she couldn't. And so I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to say a couple of words. and then we'll turn it over to our Deputy Director, Ali Bilal, to close us out for the evening. Thank you on my behalf, on behalf of the extraordinary team.
And thank you, Dr. Rami. And I say to everyone, Assalamu alaikum. And I want to shout out our brothers and sisters from Atlanta that are here. We celebrate you and we thank you all for joining us. I love the camaraderie of everyone coming together, especially in these days where we know that only Allah, this is all Allah. So regardless of what's going on in the world today, I couldn't think of a greater time to really sacrifice and fasting. But that's another story. Where there is no vision, the people perish, and I can't thank Iman enough and the entire team. I think Brother Tariq, your testimony as you're out in Inglewood and you're out there at 63rd and Racine, and there are some just having people that look like us, for young people and those that are on the corners, inquiring about what's going on. So we're now taking more pride in our community and being a part of and rebuilding our community. While we're praying about the Chicago Prize, we know that this is only the beginning of the work. And I can't thank you all enough for being a blessing, not only to Chicago Lime, but we're bridging that gap from the West End to Inglewood. So may God bless you all. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Rami, and to the entire team. You all are just amazing. And I thank God for you all daily.
Thank you, Alderwoman Stephanie Coleman. So beautiful to see you here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule to be with us in virtual space. Thank you all to everybody who's here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. I gotta say, you know, it's hard watching, you know, the beautiful event that we've seen so far this evening. It's hard kind of being here, sitting quietly in my home, knowing that, you know, if this were regular times, if we were BC before Corona, that we would all be gathered together 400, 500 deep in the IMAN parking lot in Chicago or Atlanta. So it's tough seeing the beautiful lighting and the beautiful setup there in the ceramic studio and just all the activity happening at the Green Ranch Village in Atlanta. You know, my heart wants to be there with all of you all. But I still say that I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to still be able to be in spiritual proximity with both my brothers and sisters that are there on site and with all of you who are on the Zoom with us today. You know, as Rami alluded to earlier, you know, we're in a time of disruption. And we know that it's a disruption that is causing a lot of challenge for a lot of folks. But not all disruptions are bad ones. And so we at IMAN have been using this disruption to reassess, to plan, to think about what truly matters to us individually, collectively, as a community. One of the things that we know and that we have always known is just how resilient our communities can be, how resourceful through tough times, through challenging moments. And we all, you know, we know that these challenging moments are always more challenging for some and for large, really, swaths of our communities than they are for others. And through all of that, we find a way. I was grateful to be able to sit in on an event that our family over at Sapelo Square hosted yesterday. It was a commemoration event that Rami mentioned earlier, the commemoration of what would have been the 95th anniversary of our brother Malcolm X's birth. And throughout all of that powerful conversation and really powerful artistic performances, where some of our IMAN roster artists and leaders were performing, it just kept occurring to me how profoundly powerful our community can be. And, you know, when I say community, I'm talking about the wide community of folks, the large expanse of people across the globe, really, who believe in this type of work, who recognize the deep structural issues that contribute to so many of the conditions that we're trying to address, and who align themselves with people who are committed to working to alleviate those conditions. And it really comes down to this. We are only as powerful, we are only as resilient as we are when we recognize we're all in this together. For the last 22 years, IMAN has been building a model that has attempted to address some of the most egregious systemic and structural issues facing primarily low-income communities of color in the inner city. And we haven't done that alone. We have relied on all of you, in all the little boxes across my screen and in the thousands and thousands of boxes that are not represented here on the Zoom call today. People from across the Chicagoland area, people from across the Metro Atlanta area, from across the country, and really folks from across the world. You know, I shared this with our staff earlier this week. I was really gratified to get an email from someone earlier in the week. It was a gentleman who emailed us saying, hey, you know, I learned about your work on your PBS special. There's a little PBS special that was done about our health center work a couple of years ago. He said, I saw your work on that video and I thought it was really powerful and I want to donate. But your donate page on your website, it doesn't have my country there in the drop-down box. This was a brother who was writing to us from the country of Oman. And I saw that and I was just like, my God, that's amazing. That is beautiful. I'm grateful to have that, you know, to have the issue of not having enough countries represented on our donate page, because there are that many people across the country and across the globe who want to contribute to this work. Those are the folks that are in this with us. Those are the folks that have been a part of this and will always be a very significant part of how we do this work. IMAN is at the tail end, as many of y'all know, of a very important and ambitious goal here. We are trying to raise $1 million in our $1 million Ramadan fundraising drive. And we really, really need to reach and hopefully exceed that goal. You heard about all of the work that's happening. You heard about the dire need that existed before this pandemic and that will exist even more in an even more exacerbated fashion after. And we have to reach that goal. You know, many of you know that we have been blessed to be able to enjoy the amazing and pivotal support of funders, of foundations, private foundations, and small and large family foundations from across the country. And some of those are here represented on our call today. Our family from Islamic Relief USA, from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois, from Chicago Beyond, and you know, and more beyond those for whom, you know, we are indebted for this work and we can't do the work without. But time and time again, you've heard us tell you, we've heard us tell you that these foundations give because you give, because our community of supporters are in this with us, because they see that support from our community, that is what bolsters their confidence in this work. And that is the truth. They give because our community gives. But I think even beyond that, we would not be able to do this work without our community behind us. You know, people have asked us, especially in the last couple of years, you know, does IMAN still need our support? You know, does the $5 donation, the $500 donation, the $5,000 donation, does that really add up? Does that really work against a $10 million budget, right? And the true story is that there are entire swaths of our work that would not exist, that would not be possible. And I am not speaking in hyperbole here, that would not be possible without the financial support from the individuals and the families out there who've been lifting up on their shoulders for the last 22 years. They simply would not exist. So as you'll see on our website, if you go there, you'll see that we are 73% towards our goal of $1 million. And we have a few blessed days left of this month. And we are turning to you again to help us to reach and prayerfully exceed this goal. I'm praying that that you all help us go deep. You help us get 110% of the way there. and you help us spread the word to your families, to your friends, to your networks, that we have to reach this goal, that IMAN needs us to reach this goal, because our community needs us to reach this goal, because they can't do this work without you. Giving can happen in a myriad of ways. You all know that. You can give online at our website that's up there, imancentral.org. You can give via check sent to our main offices on 63rd Street. You can find that address on the website. You can give via stock. You can give via wire. You can give via cash. You can give via money order. Any form your financial contribution comes in, we will take that and we will put it to very, very good use on the ground in Chicago and Atlanta, and really across the country, since this model spans across the country. We need your support, and we take the spiritual, the amana, the spiritual trust that your support is for us onto our shoulders, because it is that important to us, because it is that important to the work. So I ask, as we close out here tonight, for you to keep this work in your prayers, for you to keep the people that are on the front lines here in your prayers. We don't take that lightly. We don't take that for granted, especially in spiritually profound nights like the last few nights that we're in right now. Please keep us in your prayers. Please keep us in your thoughts, and ask the Most High to continue making us, giving us the ability to do this work. And to do it in the best and most excellent way possible. I ask that the Most High envelops you with his mercy, with his protection and forgiveness and blessing and light, and that you continue to trust us to do this work that we feel so driven to do in Chicago, Atlanta, and beyond. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us tonight. You can see a recording of this video as soon as we have this up on YouTube. You can share this out with your friends and family. And we ask that you stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, and be well. Peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.